Welcome to One Man's Tracks, the second-hand music channel. After going through and ranking their extraordinary discography and deciding on a favorite, it's now time to go even deeper into the mysterious, modern progressive rock legends known as the Mars Volta. Forming in 2001 following their post-hardcore success with At the Drive-In, Cedric Bixler Zavala and Omar Rodriguez Lopez, alongside their fellow de facto bandmates Jeremy Ward and Isaiah Ike Owens, would recruit Ava Gardner and John Theodore, forming the original Mars Volta lineup, and they'd release their debut EP titled Tremulant in April of 2002. This band is sadly marred by inescapable loss, uncomfortable, often tormented reality that, as emotionally taxing as it must be for them to go through, it seemingly also inspires this band's dense, overarching, otherworldly atmospheres. One such example of this loss is the fact that Ava's dad passed away just a few days into their first tour, causing her to step away while they were getting to recording their first album. Utilizing their art to help process and maybe heal from the trauma a little bit, the first album itself is a dedication to the life and death of Julio Venegas, a friend of Cedric's, a fellow El Pasoan who had a mental health breakdown following a drug-induced coma that led to him leaping off an overpass to his death in 1996. Cedric wrote the song Embroglio from that At the Drive-In debut about this event, and now we've got an entire album about it. Ava ended up being replaced by iconic Chili Peppers bassist Flea for the majority of their debut, and they even got John Frusciante to provide some backups as well on this incomparable masterpiece, released on June 24th, 2003 through Gold Standard Laboratories and Universal Records, produced by none other than Omar and Rick Rubin. Here's the Mars Volta's Canadian Gold Certified debut album, De-Loused in the Comatorium. But before we can even really get started, the tragedy of this record grows even further with the overdose death of sound manipulator Jeremy Ward just 1 month before it dropped. It would lead to Omar and Cedric's sobriety, as well as some more haunted music in the form of the song The Widow that comes on their absolutely inspired and unhinged second LP, Francis the Mute. His interesting sound manipulations play a valuable role in making this such a bewildering and riveting record. It sees the Voltans stretching the bounds of experimental rock with invigorating fusions of metal, jazz, pop, and Latin music, all imbued with a punk rock ethos. Its astonishing, swirling psychedelics provide an enthralling hour of remarkable expressions of isolation, fear, and the delusions of an anguished mind. De-Loused in the Comatorium follows the convoluted story of a man named Serpentax. Its full story starts before the music does, beginning on a bridge with this esoteric monologue and Serpent anticipating his asphalt-kissing finale. The full story is linked down in the description, and it is about as articulate as it is confounding. It has taken me quite a while to start peeling apart the meaning behind the abstract nature of this evolving enigma. There's this oddly disconnected and ethereal air to this multi-dimensional tale. Its over-the-top poetic prose takes a ton of focus and a ludicrous vocabulary in order to follow it to the point of immersion, not to mention how indirect and conceptually absurd things become. While it may only be 23 pages long, its density and absurdity certainly is a great match for this album's whirling, perplexing, tormented compositions. This story's dreamlike, self-flatulating, at times bilingual meanderings eventually warp their way into an entirely new fantasy realm. A purgatory world of his own comatose creation, a root of unrelenting escape where he's placed in an ectopic, shape-shifting penance propulsion vehicle in order to take the journey to pay for his, at this time, unknown crimes. Trapped in an unconscious mind maze, floundering for a reason, we've finally reached this album's buzzing, anxious little introduction. Son et Lumière is the rat poison morphine overdose that left Julio in a week-long coma. The keys on this track resembling an ambulance a little bit, and the sudden wailing guitars and pounding drums, perhaps the defibrillation jolts that revive him and simultaneously transform him into this LP's illusionary protagonist. With just how short it is and how seamlessly it flows into inertiatic ESP, it's hard to even imagine Son et Lumière and inertiatic ESP separate from each other. Heck, they even share a line. Their hazy, disturbed verses quickly fall away once their "Now I'm Lost" chorus breaks through and just blows me away. It's a beautifully emotive mix of confusion and acceptance, and its delivery and melody are now so deeply ingrained into my psyche. Maybe I'm the one who's lost. It's a wild way to kickstart this Comatorium trip. We've entered the manic internal nightmare world. As soon as Serpent tries to rest, he's subjected to a myriad of hellish fates. From face-melting poisoning to near total annihilation, it brings us into the radical, seething prog metal of the haunt of Roulette Dares. An absolute slammer of a track that takes us from one form of torture to the next, eventually leaving us in perpetual darkness, stapled to a ship's deck in a vile, illogical, nautical graveyard. With each subsequent track, Serpent finds himself scrambling to piece together his new setting as he clips through his different subconscious layers, slowly becoming more and more obscure as this thing progresses. There's a line here in the story, superstitious, ramble, tangent inconsistency, that maybe doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but kind of summarizes it pretty well. With Roulette here, we're in this abandoned naval shipyard, trapped in darkness, all alone, outside of time, and it causes this emotional arc that's really powerfully portrayed here, going from anger to acceptance, isolation, suffering, surrender. The waves here are tremendous. Floating next into a short droning instrumental titled Tírame a las Aranas, or Throw Me to the Spiders, once more transgressing lateral dementia, leaving one body behind and pouring ourselves into an exothermic version of another. We take ourselves to Drunk Ship of Lanterns now, another exceptional emotional rock number with ridiculously moving breakdowns and panic-fueled instrumentals, creating this gorgeously chaotic display. Aria Tarka comes rolling in, thoughtfully finding our protagonist dissolved in this abstract, water-like, unconscious essence that's being operated upon by a cunning, butcherous, dog-fingered mercenary doctor named Wolfram Tarrant. It drifts in and out of realities. Eventually, Wolfram does put Serpent back into corporeal form, but he's really not all that sure who he is, or what he's in store for. This song is magnificent as it is overwhelming, just reverberating, building rock that goes so damn hard. Serpentax is now a powerful, translucent, replicant woman called Klavetica Ples Hoyos, who floats across the desert, killing with just her voice, harboring within herself a rebellion leader called Eugenio Valo, who is an enemy of this barren land's tyrannical ruler, Recherche Bellicose. The next song, Cicatrix ESP, is told from the perspective of Eugenio as he defects, pushes back, and is eventually captured and turned into dust by Bellicose. Serpent then comes re-emerging from that dust and tells the story of his ongoing multi-dimensional witch hunt. This is the longest number on the album, with a wonky 4-minute ambient center to it that seemingly represents the dreadful knowing journey of defeat that our failed rebel leader feels here. It's a bit much, it's pretty far out there, but at this point we're so deep in the record and so deep in the layers of consciousness that I'm kind of down for it, especially if I'm wearing my headphones here. It's great space to kind of process the madness of this epic before we jump back in with more rapid fire traditional drumming and these layers of hectic psych rock ambience. It's a total jam. I'm defected! The ectopic shape-shifting penance propulsion train keeps chugging with this apparatus must be unearthed. Serpent emerges as his final form, a god-killing iconoclast known as Moatiliata, who avenges the souls of murdered children in his name, restoring balance by dismantling an empire and biting its crooked ruler in half. It's so much slammed into 4.5 minutes. It's eerie, intense, with a cathartic, destructive decree. Following that swiftly enacted vengeance, he's awoken from the Comatorium. Serpent spends his final years packing up his things and saying cryptic goodbyes in an ever-alienating world, battling off those inner worlds that had collapsed around him while comatose. He eventually finds these hallucinations pulling him back to that overpass we had from the story's introduction. The morose televators comes winding in just as he hits the ground, depicting the fear and the brutal aftermath of his final psychotic disassociative break. It's done with a very touching and heartfelt expression here. It is a crushing track, and it has a really nice stand-up bass feature from Justin Mendel Johnson here. Closing out with a final urgent triumph, Take the Veil Serpent Tax is a catchy, screaming send-off with a Chili Peppers jam in the middle of it. It's a grandiose depiction of Serpent entering into the afterlife, a pained celebration of life that is both tragic as well as uplifting. As puzzling and even pedantically written as it may be, there does definitely seem to be some kind of discernible structure that maybe sits atop some kind of supernatural foundation that manages to conceptualize this really curious chronicle. A traumatic telling of loss and fear, the damages of drugs, the tragedy of isolationist mental health disorders. De-Loused in the Comatorium's unique tale told with this dense, artful Latin rock layers and whirling atmospherics, and all sung with this melancholic mastery, has so much punch packed into 61 minutes that trying to summarize it has me at a bit of a loss for the right words. It's an adventurous, captivating, multi-genre brain twister that manages to bring order to a chaotic world and doesn't lose out on any deep, emotive deliveries in that process. It's a feat that the group managed to repeat with their follow-up, Francis the Mute, in February of '05. Just top-tier avant-rock fusions that they continue to churn out year after year, with Amputexture and the Bedlam and Goliath following these ones. To keep catching up, we get to Octahedron and Nocturnicate before the band broke up in 2012. Omar and Cedric did get together for a couple of Omar solo projects, as well as that At the Drive-In reunion in 2016. They reunited the Mars Volta, though, officially just last year, and released their self-titled album in September of 2022, and have recently added an acoustic version of that album just a few weeks ago in April of 2023. if you're interested in checking out my ranking of that entire new updated discography, you can check it out right there, and I've got it linked down in the description there for you as well. When I finally get the chance, I'm excited to jump into the stuff that Omar got up to during the hiatus, like Bosnian Rainbows and Anti-Mask. I'm honestly a little intimidated by his massive solo catalog, but after watching a couple of his films, I'm sure there's going to be some great ideas there that I'm really going to enjoy as well in one of those. Maybe I'll start out with the stuff he collaborated with Cedric on, and I do also want to get into De Facto and Anywhere. But first, I get to go see them live in about a month, so that's first on the list. I'm gonna just fire myself up, keep listening to this incredible catalog, and just enjoy my first ever Mars Volta live show, whatever it may be. Really, all the members, past and present, have such extensive musical backgrounds and catalogs that spread across such a wide variety of genres. I'm happily inundated by the amount of new bands I get to go now seek out. I would appreciate some suggestions, recommendations down in the comments, as well as if you just want to let me know how you got into the Mars Volta in the first place. Maybe you saw a cool live show, or if you just want to let me know your favorite song off this unbelievable album. Like the video if you've made it this far, and consider subscribing for more throwback, thoughtful, retrospective album reviews. There's one right there, and you can check out my worst to best Mars Volta ranking. Thank you. All the best, guys. Take good care. It's because it is